That said, let's jump into this list, and we start with the country at number 10, Sudan, 1070 BCE. The Republic of Sudan dates back at least 3,000 years. Research seems to show that by the 8th millennium BCE, communities in the final stage of cultural evolution settled in Sudan. These people lived in mud brick communities and were skilled in advanced hunting, fishing, and gathering. Evidence does suggest that the people of Sudan had left the Sahara Desert and migrated to Sudan, and that's when they took on farming during the 5th millennium BCE. Number 9 brings us Georgia, 1300 BCE. The country of Georgia is regarded as the birthplace of winemaking, and there you'll find the oldest wine jars in the world. And as a matter of fact, some of these wine jars are said to be at least 8,000 years old. Archaeological discoveries, they also confirm the existence of early political structures in their society, and these findings date back to the 7th century BCE. So as a result, Georgia is a pretty strong contender to be the oldest country in the world, not necessarily having the longest surviving civilization. The country next up on this list is India, 2000 BCE. It's believed that communities in India have existed for at least 250,000 years. The Bronze Age saw India's earliest known civilization, and this community is the Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization really started to flourish between the periods of 3,300 BCE and 1,300 BCE. Archaeologists believe that it is also known as Meluhha, and that's the name for the Indus civilization found in Mesopotamian texts. So because of this belief, it leads researchers to conclude that the community really flourished in the country back at that time. China is up next at number 7, 2070 BCE. The earliest Chinese civilization saw the unity of north-central China during the Shang dynasty in 1700 to 1046 BCE, and this period sees the first practice of dynastic succession. Prior to that time, historians debate the existence of an earlier civilization known as the Jia dynasty. 20th century excavations, they have uncovered sites that match the descriptions of earlier historians. But based on that info, some scholars don't believe that the Jia dynasty is real, while others say that it actually does represent the first government in ancient China. As of today, there is still no 100% proof of the existence of the Jia dynasty. Korea is next at 2333 BCE. The Korean peninsula, now consisting of North Korea and South Korea, altogether have an estimated history of over 5,000 years. Originally known as Gojoseon from 2330 BCE to 108 BCE. China and Korea are said to be the first nations to invent movable metal type printing, which is a technique of imprinting multiple copies of symbols or glyphs with a master type punch made of hard metal. So that was a practice really developed, especially in Korea. And this invention has since transformed communication, and from 37 BCE to 668 BCE, the Goryeo kingdom was deemed one of the strongest Asian nations. Halfway in at number 5, we have Armenia, 2492 BCE. Armenia's history spans over 3,500 years, with the first mentions of the country in the 6th century BCE. However, Armenia was only officially established in 782 BCE. And at the height of its power, Armenia extended from the Black Sea through the Caspian and Mediterranean Sea to Lake Urmia in Iran. And it was one of the first nations to accept Christianity as a state religion, and that happened in 301 CE. Today, the country still has its own church, the Armenian Apostolic Church, which is the national church of the Armenian people. Vietnam is at number 4, 2879 BCE. Despite this date, though, researchers believe that the history of Vietnam goes back 20,000 years. And findings from 1965 have revealed the remains of 2 homonyms. And these findings suggest prehistoric Vietnam existed even as far back as 500,000 years ago. The nation was home to some of the world's earliest societies, so this makes Vietnam one of the world's first communities of farmers, and it makes it a pretty strong contender to become the oldest country in the world. And this is based on if any new research does confirm what evidences are suggesting. Now, number 3 is Syria, 3000 BCE. Syria is home to remains that date as far back as an estimated 700,000 years ago. Of the many things that have been uncovered, remains include skeletons, as well as bones of archaic humans, and later archaeological findings have revealed the nation's long-lost city of Elba. The city is one of the earliest colonies to be excavated and is believed to have existed around 3000 BCE. Moving on to number 2, we have Egypt, 3150 BCE. So in recent years, excavations have discovered a lost city, and these new findings in Sohaj, Egypt, are believed to be more than 7,000 years old. So with these new findings, ancient Egypt's early dynastic periods now predate approximately 5 millennia ago. Archaeologists suspect that these living spaces and graves are part of a long-gone capital that is now just resurfacing. Now we end this episode off with Iran, 3200 BCE. Up until the mid-20th century, Iran was called Persia, and the country is one of the world's oldest continuous major civilizations. Its urban settlements date back to 7000 BCE, and it was first unified by the ancient Medes in 625 BCE. Iran was once part of the largest and first world empires of Cyrus the Great, known as the Achaemenid Empire of 550 to 330 BC. Later, in 1501, under the Safavid dynasty, the nation was named a liberated state. Iran became a Shia Muslim monarchy ruled by an emperor from 1501 until 1979. Because of everything I mentioned, Iran is most widely recognized as the oldest country in the world due to the survival of its civilization. The city at number 10 is Varanasi, India. According to Hindu legend, Varanasi is more than 5,000 years old, and it's considered to be one of the oldest cities in the world. Although evidence does point to about 3,000 years ago that the city was actually inhabited. Now, of course, this is a more modest date and indicates that Varanasi is among many ancient cities to appear around the first millennia BC. And it's still the oldest city in India, as it's considered the oldest city in the world to Hindus. It's located on the banks of the sacred Ganges River, and it's also an important site for pilgrims. City of Jerusalem comes at number 9. Jerusalem is one of several cities that rose up between 4,000 and 5,000 years ago over in the Levant region of the world. But it also holds a very unique history because it was really like a crossroads of 3 major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The city is home to a wealth of spiritual and religious sites. Unfortunately, though, the city has been plagued with a lot of conflicts for the past 4 millennia. It's been besieged, it's been destroyed at least twice, and the attacks on the city have been numerous. And of course, it's been recaptured about 44 times. The Old City of Jerusalem is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it's on the list of the sites in danger, as its historical monuments may face risk from tourism, as well as poor maintenance and urban development and political turmoil. Both Israel and Palestinian National Authority claim Jerusalem as their capital, so this dispute continues, and there's no end in sight to the conflict that this dispute brings up. But moving on now to the city at number 8, we have Byblos in Lebanon. Founded as Gebal by the Phoenicians, Byblos was given its name by the Greeks, who imported papyrus from the city. Now, it's a Mediterranean city in the Mount Lebanon governorate of the present-day Lebanon under the current Arabic name Jubail. The city is believed to be occupied first between 8,800 BC and 7,000 BC. And according to ancient fragments that have been found, it was built by the Cronus as the first city in Phoenicia. Today, it's believed by many to be the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. But on our list, it comes in at number 8. That means we have 7 more to go, so let's take a look. The city of Sidon, Lebanon comes in next, and it was inhabited for at least the last 6,000 years. Sidon was one of the most important Phoenician cities because it was located at the crucial port of the Mediterranean. And of course, this location had led the city to be conquered by revolving door of world great empires, including we have the Assyrians, Babylonians, the Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, Ottomans, and today about 200,000 people live in Sidon. The city of Fayoum, Egypt is at number 6. The modern Egyptian city of Fayoum occupies an area of the Nile River that has been home to human settlements for thousands of years, including the ancient city of Shedet. Now, interesting to know that the people of Shedet, they revered a live crocodile named Petsuchos, and they view this crocodile as a live embodiment of the deity Sobek. And this belief inspired the Greeks to end up calling the city Crocodilopolis. The area supported agrarian communities more than 6,000 years ago, although its population was really reduced for centuries because of drought, and it eventually started to grow again about 4,000 years ago. Now today, Fayoum is home to about 350,000 people. Modern Fayoum consists of several large mosques and bazaars, and the Hawara pyramids can be found close by. Halfway in at number 5, we have Plovdiv, Bulgaria. The second largest city in Bulgaria after the capital of Sofia, Plovdiv was originally a Thracian settlement before becoming a major Roman city. Now, it later fell into Byzantine and Ottoman rule, and that was before it became part of Bulgaria. Now, the city is a major cultural center, and it has many ancient remains, including a Roman amphitheater as well as aqueduct, and it has Ottoman baths that can be found in the city. Now, it's a very beautiful city, and it has a rich history that goes way back, thousands of years. And there's been quite a bit of evidence to show that habitation of the city dates back 6,000 years. Now, today, like I mentioned, it remains the second largest city in Bulgaria, and it's a very important cultural, educational, and economic center. We got 4 more cities coming up next. We have Athens, Greece. It's a very popular ancient city, and it's the home of philosophy as well as the birthplace of Western civilization. Athens has a lot of history, and its habitation goes way back before the days of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, all those very popular philosophers that we hear about. The city has been continuously inhabited for at least 7,000 years. Now, the oldest known human presence in Athens has been dated back between the 11th and the 7th century millennia BC. Today, it remains a very massive metropolis, and its Acropolis actually still stands, and it overlooks the whole landscape. Moving on now to number 3, we have the city of Aleppo in Syria. There's evidence of habitation of Aleppo that goes way back to about 8,000 years, but excavations at a site about 15 miles north of the city do show that this area was actually inhabited about 13,000 years ago. At least that's a close estimate that historians can generally agree upon. So you see, with that data, it suggests that Aleppo and its surrounding areas actually comprise the oldest continuous human settlement on Earth. Now, the city is first mentioned in cuneiform tablets from roughly 5,000 years ago, which cite that it was very proficient in commerce as well as military wartime. Now, due to its location between the Mediterranean Sea and Mesopotamia, and at the end of the Silk Road, which passed through Central Asia and Mesopotamia, Aleppo was at the center of the ancient world. Now, the city was under Hittite control up until around 800 BC, before going through Assyrian, Greek, as well as Persian rule. And it was later then occupied by the Romans as well as the Arabs, and also besieged by the Crusaders, and then taken over by the Mongols as well as the Ottomans. Everybody wanted a piece of this city. But now, moving on to number 2, we have the city of Jericho in Palestine. Jericho is considered by some to actually be the longest continuously inhabited city in the entire world, and it's located near the Jordan River in the West Bank. Now, it's the administrative seat of the Jericho Governorate, and the city was occupied by Jordan from 948 to 967, and it has then been held under Israeli occupation since 1967. Administrative control was then handed over to the Palestinian Authority in the year 1994. Now, it's also very well known in Judeo-Christianity. It's seen as the place of the Israelites' return from bondage in Egypt, led by Joshua, who was a successor of the prophet Moses. And archaeologists have dug up the remains of more than 20 successive settlements in Jericho, and the first of which is believed to date back 11,000 years ago, which is about 9,000 BCE. And then finally, at number 1, we have Damascus in Syria. Damascus is widely believed to be the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. I know there's several cities that are believed to be the oldest. But with Damascus, there's actually evidence that suggests that habitation of the city dates back over 11,000 years. And although I have to admit that this is debatable by many historians, nevertheless it is the capital and the second largest city of Syria after Aleppo. Its location as well as its persistence have made the city a crossroads for civilizations of ancient times. And today its metropolitan area is home to over 2.5 million people. And back in 2008, it was actually named the Arab capital of culture. Now the city was one of Alexander the Great's biggest conquest, and it has since been under Roman, Arab, and Ottoman rule. And today its wealth of history makes it a very popular tourist destination. Okay, so let's begin with the first nation. I'm introducing the nation of Greece, and they date back to 3000 BC. Ancient temples and ruins still connect modern Greece to ancient Greece, although the modern version was not founded until 1832. You see, the Greek civilization was Europe's first advanced civilization, with the capital city of Athens seeing the world's first democratic system, and this was back in the year 508 BCE. Next nation I want to look at is the country of Iran. While Iran has only existed in a recognizable form since the beginning of the 16th century, the area has a longer history of civilization than almost anywhere in the entire world. The Bronze Age Elamite civilization was one of the first to develop the cuneiform writing in the 3rd millennia BCE, and the Proto-Iranian groups were already arriving in the area in the 2nd millennium BCE. The Achaemenid Empire, which existed from the year 550 BCE to 330 BCE, was the biggest empire that the world has ever seen. Now moving on to San Marino. Now I'm throwing this nation in just as a bonus because I found it pretty interesting, and why not? San Marino is the 3rd smallest country in Europe. It is, however, undeniably one of the oldest countries in the entire world, as it was founded in 301 CE. A stonemason, Marinus, who would eventually become Saint Marinus, came from his home in what is now known as Croatia to escape persecution for his Christian beliefs, and founded the country as a republic. While San Marino is fairly unique, now existing as a microstate, it reflects a long tradition of small city-states in the continent of Europe. Now moving on to China, who dates back to 2100 BC. It's believed that the Shao dynasty was the first dynasty to ever exist in China because there's no real evidence of any earlier one. However, the first dynasty recorded in the contemporary writing system, which is known as the Oracle Bone Script, was the Shang dynasty, and they date back to 1600 BC. Nowadays, the country celebrates its founding year as 221 BCE, but many dynasties have come and gone since China's inception. Among its oldest buildings are the Nanshan Temple, and the country's oldest preserved timber building is the Great Buddha Hall. So the next country we're looking at is the country of Ethiopia, dating back to 3000 BC. When we go way further back, before the formation of nations and countries, some of the oldest hominid fossils have been found in Ethiopia. Evidence shows from ancient Egyptian texts that it was one of Egypt's biggest trading partners, which, as we know, is one of the oldest countries and civilizations in the world. Ancient Egyptian texts also names Ethiopia in some of their documents. Ethiopia is also the only African country that was never colonized by any European country, as they were able to defeat all of their invading forces. Now, as I just mentioned, the country of Egypt. King Menes started this country and also started a reign of pharaohs that ruled the country for over 3,000 years. And while the modern country of Egypt is in many ways far detached from ancient Egypt has shaped many of the sites that you'll see if you go to Egypt when you visit on a holiday, let's say. Also, Egyptian hieroglyphics is the world's second oldest writing system after cuneiform, and it appeared on the scene around 3200 BCE. The modern state of Egypt did not appear until the 20th century, when the Egyptians finally threw off the British rule in 1952. However, predating all of the countries in this episode, the ancient Egyptian civilization is worth a mention for its pyramids, its sphinx, as well as its religious monuments. It's just a beautiful, magnificent place. It's always fascinated me, and I've never been to Egypt, but I studied ancient Egypt in school. I started learning how to read some hieroglyphics. I don't think I remember anything. Whether you believe that Egypt was the oldest nation or not, it's still a very fascinating country with an interesting history.